here with Willem. Willem, let's start off. For people that don't know who you are, we've seen names. You're the grandfather of cannabis. At least that was my introduction to you. Walk people through kind of your background. Maybe what you were doing. You went to school for something. What kicked off your business career, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, yes, thank you, Jason. Yeah, no, I am an accountant actually by training. You call them CPAs, I think.
Yeah.
From there, I went into the investment business. I worked for a partnership initially called Allen Gray, which is the largest independent investment management firm in South Africa. And I ended up being the senior partner in South Africa of Allen Gray. And then basically went smaller and smaller after that. I've never really been a big corporate type person. And started to do mainly project finance. That's what I've been doing a lot, and also mostly in the countries around South Africa, because the competition is much less there. Many people who are willing to go to those airports, for example. That's really what I've been doing since about 2003. And then, two of the people that I had worked with in the project finance field, the one was in the shopping center, and the other one was in the renewable energy space. They approached me one day out of the blue. I didn't even know they knew each other, and said, well, they've been applying for a cannabis cultivation license here in South Africa. And then I said, okay, well, and they said to me, well, they're getting nowhere. This was 2015. I didn't even tell my family what I was doing. It was still sort of like the early days of the industry. And they said to me, well, we know you are involved in all these countries around South Africa. Can you maybe help us to apply for licenses there? Because we're not getting anywhere in South Africa. South Africa's just closed. And so, we started MediGrow, and we applied in 8 countries at the time. And the first license we got was in Lesotho. And that's really been the start of the MediGrow story.
Well, tell me, let's take it even a step back. So you go from an accountant, and I'm an accountant by trade too. So again, I feel your pain in going through the accounting world. But going on from that, walk me through, how does an accountant get into cannabis? So, you're doing, I guess normal equity financing, a whole bunch of stuff from the business side. And what made you be like, cannabis is something interesting. I want to start a company with, these other people.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you ask that, because just about everybody you come across in the cannabis industry has some personal story. It's not as if, they sit and think, okay, this is what I'm going to have. They've got, in many cases, they themselves have used it or whatever. In my case, my wife uses the oil. She has been using it. She was using it even at the time when I met those people. And it was, she uses it preventively mainly. Her whole family has got cancer, except her. And I don't think it's just the cannabis. She also lives a very healthy lifestyle and does a lot of exercise. I do think the cannabis is a contributory factor. So when they came to me, it was not as if I was completely unaware of the benefits. I mean, I don't need clinical trials. I'll just look at my wife. I can see it. So, that was the main reason. And also, I think I have over the years tended to like challenges that other people find difficult. So when these guys said, look, we can't seem to get a license, that was kind of like, oh, well, okay, let me try. And we've spent a lot of time at MediGrow actually understanding the problems that governments have, the difficulties that they have in bringing this new industry into existence, and focusing on helping them as well.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So cool. I mean, that's a pretty good background. Like you said, there's a lot of people with their crazy story of, oh, they had this, big life-changing moment. But I think that's awesome. You had an opportunity, you knew, you saw the results already, and you got into it. You maybe want to even say, a couple sentences on, what Metagrow is.
Okay, yeah. At the moment, we are a portfolio or a collection of companies in Africa, and one in Jamaica and one in Lebanon. So it's mostly Africa. About 14 different countries that either have secured medicinal cannabis licenses or are in the process of trying to get and securing one. And we have 8 licenses in total in 4 countries. So essentially, yeah, and one is in production already. And the reason why we're looking for money all the time to roll out more of these entities. So yeah, that's the idea. It's not quite a franchise in the sense that we, formal franchise agreement or anything like that, but you can compare it to a franchise operation where some of the things like the international sales agreements, etc., are being arranged by Metagrow itself, and individual companies tend to have each one in their country have their specific issues that they are responsible for.
Interesting. And to confirm, I'm assuming by the name, obviously, you guys focus on, the medicinal part of cannabis. I know Jeff is a big believer in the medical side, not so much, at least on the recreational side, or his focus is more on the medical side. Do you guys want to maybe talk, as both you guys are experts in the space, about the difference between medical and recreational, cannabis?
Yeah, I think there's not just those 2 camps. In fact, okay, to start off with, at the moment, recreational cannabis is not exportable. So there's an international convention, part of the United Nations, the International Narcotics Control Board. So you cannot export for recreational purposes. So, and in Africa, we see the value of this industry as being able to export to the richer countries, so we can actually make some money for Africa. So that sort of forces us into the medical side. I don't have a strong, opinion about. I tried cannabis and I found it very confusing. So I'm not a recreational user. But the big market, I think, in the end is going to be what I call the wellness market or the nutritional market, which is not strictly medicinal, doesn't go through clinical trials and all of those things. It's a lot like the complementary medicines market. And I think, and also the beverages, all these, the different ways of using cannabis that are now being discovered and developed. I think that's going to be by far the biggest market. In fact, I hear that in Breckenridge, the tax revenue from cannabis is now exceeding the tax revenue from alcohol. So that's the first city where that's happened. So yeah, now I think that's where the big market is, and we're approaching it from the medicinal side. I mean, I can't go to a regulator in, say, Uganda or so and sit there. Unless I can say I've never been involved in the illegal market, I've never been involved in the recreational market, because that's my credibility. And so even though I don't have a problem with those other markets, Metagrow as a company, we focus on the medicinal market.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I definitely think you're right in terms of where the market's going there. It's funny, that's a question I had for, what part do you think is going to be the big blow up in the next 10, 20 years? Obviously, cannabis as a whole is, being more accepted as, more than just I'm smoking a joint. It's funny, growing up, parents were obviously very against drugs, like most parents are. When I was growing up, pot was illegal, even in Canada. But growing up, it's funny, I was over there for dinner the other week, and I saw on the on the kitchen counter, there was a CBD oil that my mom was using. I was like, holy smokes, like people that were so against drugs are becoming a little bit more accepting, which is incredibly interesting. I mean, do you want to maybe talk about more the medical side? Obviously, that's our focus, where you see that industry going in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, okay. Firstly, I think let me start with more this. Well, let me start here. The whole world, I think, is going back towards plant-based medicine and away from the chemical molecule, single molecule type medicines. I think that's a big trend. I say in 10 years' time, what we call alternative medicines today will be called medicine, and what we call medicine today will be called alternatives. Why don't you use an alternative? Use a chemical, that type of thing. And I may be a little bit early in that, or it may not quite go as far as that, but I can see in everywhere that people are going back to plant-based. Also food. I still eat meat, but I'm not sure in 10 years' time if that is still going to be done. So we're going back to plant-based medicine, and cannabis is at the forefront of that movement. But when you talk about the strict medicinal market, the way we understand it, which is regulated and controlled for quality and for stability and so on, I think that will actually end up being quite a small part of the market. The big part is going to be the wellness market. Topical oils, people use various, going to be using various products, cannabis-related products. In fact, I'm using a little cream now, which has propolis in it, which is the stuff that the bees use, plus CBD. So it's some very interesting opportunities come around, so I think that's where the big market is going to be. The medicinal market is going to be for pain and pain management, which also basically more a health thing. But the things like epilepsy and autism and those things that people can prescribe cannabis for, I think that will always remain quite a small niche part of the market, not the mainstream, not where the big. So when you talk about what MJ Medtech or Wuhan or whatever, I think they change their name all the time, maybe good or bad, I don't know. The things that they're focusing on, like this Medspresso, things like that, I think that's the big future. And medicinal, it's like morphine. Morphine and aspirin. A lot more people use aspirin than morphine. Even though when you need something, when you really are in trouble, and you are having an operation or whatever, you get morphine. But it's a small market, and I think the same thing is happening in cannabis.
Do you want to maybe touch on, and I think I've had this chat with Jeff before, but do you want to touch on, so on the wellness side, obviously, there's tons of products. A lot of people look at the wellness world and go, well, I don't know which cream to choose from. There's 800. I don't know which edible to choose from. 2,000. I don't know what toothpaste to use. So do you want to maybe talk about how a company can set themselves apart and what you think will be the long, I guess, big success stories in the space when it comes to wellness? I know there's a lot of, I've chatted with Jeff, he listed a bunch that are just, oh yeah, it does this, we don't know what the dosage is, it's in there somewhere, here you go, have this toothpaste or have this coffee. Do you want to maybe talk about what sets apart certain companies, certain products, and what you would be looking for?
Yeah, I think and it's really the same, I think, for any product. There are two things. It's the quality and the price. And I think that is where the combination of Medigrow and Wuhan is actually very interesting, because we focus very much on the price side in terms of being in Africa and having much lower production cost than elsewhere. They focus on high quality. Obviously, we also focus a lot on quality in the medicinal space, because if if you have brothers and sisters that from the same father and same mother, you can get quite a wide variety in the children. And the same thing happens in the plant community, that we found even on the sunny side of the plant and on the shadowy side of the plant, it's a huge difference in the cannabinoids. So, but when you go into the pharmacy and you buy medicine, you want it to be the same as last month and you want to be the same as next month. So that big variety has to be brought back into a much smaller range. And that's really the trick and the heart of medicinal cannabis production. That's why it's so expensive as well. So basically we focus on quality and on price. And I think those are the two things that have to be right if you want to survive. And that's not just a cannabis thing, it's any business. If you don't have the quality, you don't start, you don't play in the game. And if you don't have the price, you don't stay very long. So those are the two factors that I think influence and will influence the market going forward. As I say, at the moment, there's regulatory chaos. So people get away with things that they wouldn't otherwise get away with, like producing in Canada. It just doesn't make economic sense. But because of the regulatory chaos, that's the only way it can happen at the moment. But as we move along to more normal regulatory environment, those things will disappear, and price and quality will be the two factors.